Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Glad to see you. If you can, some of you I can see, most of you I cannot. If you want to turn your cameras on, I would love that. We would love that. So as we are accepting people still joining, we're going to give it like another minute and we're going to get started. But I'm excited for this. We cannot wait for us to dive in with Natasha. Guys are up for a very, very helpful, informative discussion and learning some new aspects of the implementation of the ketogenic diet. I really hope this will serve everyone and we'll get to enjoy our time together. Yeah, sure. So if you can turn your cameras on, we would love to see your faces. And if you cannot, as Natalie says, she's on the road, totally fine. So, okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Donika. For those of you who have not attended those meetings before, welcome to the Ketogenic Lifestyle for Mental Health group. Our purpose is to get together, share experiences, share our thoughts and insights into this relatively new, yet quite impactful treatment of using metabolic therapies to heal mental and physical. And what we're seeing is through this root cause treatment, we can achieve tremendous benefits for our health that extend beyond just mental health. People get off medications. I certainly am those lived experiences. So really what we're trying to do here is come together as a community and talk about what really excites us, right? Like how can we support each other in doing even better, find our own type of people that are interested into those holistic treatments and just want to share their experience and support others to do better or get support to do better as well. So this is the purpose of our group. We meet twice a month. We recently started having those guest speaker formats, which we are attending today. And it's been amazing journey. I hope you will get to enjoy it. And so today we have a guest speaker. I am so honored to have Natasha here with us. Natasha is just an amazing human being, but in addition to that, she is such a great professional field, and I'm personally inspired by everything she has to share with us. So she has nearly 20 years of experience as psychiatric nurse. She also has, so she's a registered psychiatric nurse in Canada, but she also has master's degree in psychology and neuroscience of mental health. And what I love about her is her passion to combine holistic approaches with innovative approaches, specifically for mental health. And not only that, but she also has her own lived experience, and that's in that kind of reflecting in her professional path where she specializes in adult ADHD, which is her own experience as well. So I really value that piece of having the professional background, having all the science that backs it up, but also living it, right? That personal experience, which has been my experience as well. So I'm super excited. I'm really honored to have you, Natasha, here, and you guys. Welcome again to everyone who are joining us. What we're going to do for today is really to hear a little bit from Natasha about her experience, professional and personal. But I really want to give you a chance to ask your questions and engage in the discussion. So we'll open it up for questions after Natasha shares a little bit about her journey and just gives us a little bit more about her perspective and experience. And then we'll open it up for discussion so everyone will be able to ask questions or just share your perspective, your thoughts, your own experience. It's really no wrong or right way to do that. We're part of this community. We're in this together. Everyone is welcome to join and share in a respectful manner. All you need to do is just raise your hand and I'll ask to unmute and we'll do that. But as a start, Natasha, welcome again. Thank you for your time. I'm really excited. We would love to hear more about your experience. And as I mentioned, that piece between personal and professional. And I know that this could be a very long talk, and we have done one of those more in-depth talks that some of you may want to check out, and I'll share a link. But as a start, feel free to introduce yourself and how you kind of encountered the ketogenic diet, what has it done for you, just like an overall description of your experience with it, and then let us know how you see it working in your own life and in life of others that you help with that treatment.
Yeah, for sure. So first off, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm really excited. And with that being said, I think ultimately I'm coming into this today wanting to be a helpful resource for people. So like you said, Donika, at the end, I'm more than willing to answer any questions people might have. But I also need to clarify too, because I'm in a different position where I'm coming into this talking about my own personal experience, but I am also a mental health clinician. So there might be a few questions. I'm just kind of forewarning people right now that, if it starts to kind of go into giving medical advice, I might not be able to give a full answer. But with that being said, I'm also okay too if people want to contact me after this interview, if they have more specifics, so that I could help redirect people if needed in that case.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so with that being said, like you mentioned, I am a registered psychiatric nurse, and I've been practicing in the field of mental health for about 20 years. It's been like 18 and a half years. So we're shooting up. I say 20, maybe it looks a little bit more impressive that way, but for about 18 years here. And the last 10 years, I've been doing private practice. So I have a clinic space that I run and a comprehensive dialectical behavior therapy treatment program that I'm a part of. And I primarily work as a psychotherapist. And I'm now starting to implement ketogenic diets into my practice because over the past year, I've had the direct experience of seeing how profound this, diet can be, because I have been diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed as an adult. I functioned very well. So I think that's why it took so long to get any kind of a diagnosis. I was functioning well on the outside. My life looked great. I have a husband that I've been married to and in a relationship with for 16 years. I have a good family. I don't have any kind of history of significant traumas. Career-wise, working professional, have a couple of degrees, doing quite well in terms of, I think when we're kind of talking about this idea of what you want life to look like, I feel like I was living the life.
Yeah.
And with that being said, there were things I struggled with that I couldn't really understand until I went on this diet, because now I have such a direct comparison that when I think of my life a couple years ago and how I felt, it is wildly different, wildly different. So some of the things that, because I've been thinking about this a lot, because I'm often getting asked more about this and interviews such as this. So I'm thinking a lot about the things I struggled with the most before that I wasn't fully aware of. And the biggest one that comes to mind is just like feeling this pent up energy. Like that's part of the hyperactivity that we're talking about when it comes to ADHD, like feeling unsettled. I couldn't relax. If I tried to relax, my mind is spinning in a bunch of different directions. I have to get up, I have to move around, just like this constant discomfort and being like, often sometimes we talk about like being in the rat race or like that hamster wheel of never getting ahead. But it was like a hamster, maybe with like a million legs going really fast. So it was, I felt like I was living this life where it was like, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And I think looking back, I always had to have some kind of big project on the go because I think I was looking for some kind of a relief. I think in my mind, if I was like, once I do this and this and this and this and this, I will feel calm. And it would never happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where I got really stuck. And being on the ketogenic diet is something that offered the calmness. And that's the biggest change that I've noticed. And when we're talking about ADHD too, I'm going to dive into this a bit because this is what I'm seeing a lot of as well, especially when people are being diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, is I really feel like there is a lot of stigma behind it. And I see this a lot, unfortunately, with other mental health professionals and with physicians, where they don't fully understand it. And in fairness, I used to be one of those clinicians at one time because I was ignorant to the symptoms and I didn't fully understand it. So when I was learning more about ADHD and I was starting to see more of these symptoms within my own clients that I was working with, I would often start to hear a lot of really, unfortunately, negative feedback from other clinicians or other practitioners being like, well, everybody struggles with those problems. And I think what I want to highlight here is when people have symptoms of ADHD, so we're talking about there can be a lot of hyperactivity, there can be a lot of forgetfulness, there can be a lot of disorganization. We talk about time blindness, like losing track of time really easily. Yes, those are things that can happen to absolutely everybody, and they do happen to the vast majority of people. But with ADHD, we're talking about the consistency of it. Like those things were happening every single day. And I know I talked about this in my interview with you, like I had to change my outfits multiple times, almost every day before I could leave the house because I couldn't get the organizational piece together to figure out how can I put something together and leave the house. Just a mundane routine thing I did all the time, and I still couldn't master it for whatever reason. The other thing I'm seeing a lot of too with clients that I work with that have ADHD are almost like OCD type symptoms. And I think there's a correlation there too, because I think people who struggle with ADHD have such a hard time with concentration and memory that if I could go back and it was always triple checks. If I could triple check something, then it's almost like it clicked in my brain. I could be like, okay, I got it now, and now I can move on. So those are the types of things that have really made a difference when we're talking about going on the diet. So I've now been on this diet for just over a year, and I was introduced to the diet in a couple ways. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth because we do have an interview where we spoke about that, and people could go back and review some of that if they want more details. But I was familiar with the ketogenic diet in 2017 for a couple of reasons. I had a client who responded really well to it at that time. And I also had a dog who was very sick with aggressive bone cancer that we put on a ketogenic diet. And she did like amazing on it. So that's kind of initially how I was introduced to it. And then a few years later, when I was diagnosed with ADHD, so I was diagnosed in 2022. So we're saying this is pretty recent. This is just in the last couple of years. When I was diagnosed, I trialed medication. I took stimulant Concerta, took it consistently for about a year. At that time, there were parts of the medication that helped. And then there were also negative components to that too. You'd get a crash in the evening. It would suppress your appetite. And I didn't like that inconsistency, where you can feel good and then you kind of crash and then you can wake up, take the medication, feel okay again, and then crash. So it was this constant up and down. So I had the thought after I had been on Concerta for a while, I reflected back and I wondered if a ketogenic diet could be helpful, but there was nothing really even in the research at that time. So I remember I was looking for research studies, trying to find some kind of a link, and there was nothing because a lot of this research that's coming out now has just started coming out in the past year. So I came across one of Chris Palmer's podcasts, which I think a lot of you are probably familiar with Chris Palmer. Came across one of his podcasts. I think he was on a Diary of a CEO, and he was talking about the ketogenic diet. And I remember being really excited, being like, I knew it. I should have just trusted myself that there was something about that diet that could be helpful. And then from there, I kind of completely changed my life. I watched that interview. I initiated a ketogenic diet last March, utilized the Carb Manager app. I had to use because I wanted to track the ketones because I think tracking the ketones is so incredibly important. We didn't have any blood testing monitors available in Canada when I started. So I utilized the urine strips just to make sure I was in some kind of a ketosis. And after a few weeks, I could feel right away the shift. And it was wild. And the interesting thing here too is like my husband's done keto before. I have some friends who have done keto for other health related issues. And they're like, yeah, it helps my mind a bit. Like I feel some clarity, but for me, it is profound. It is like a completely different brain, the way I feel when I'm on a ketogenic diet and I'm running off the ketones. So, um, implemented a ketogenic diet last March. And then in April, kind of April going into May, I took Dr. Georgia Eads' course for training clinicians how to implement ketogenic diets. And then just have been kind of like following the research. Went to that conference in October last year in Washington, D.C., where you and I met. And then since then, it's kind of been this cascade of reaching out to different people in the community, which everybody in this community is absolutely lovely. So I really encourage people, like, don't be shy. If you're ever curious about somebody in the community and their story, reach out. Most people are willing to help each other out here because we've had the direct experience of how profound this diet can be. Um, and yeah, and then that's kind of now led to me being, part of this meetup group, being on a couple different kind of podcast platforms. Metabolic Mind has their Think Smart tool and model that's come out. I recently did an interview for that as well. So it's just been kind of, for me personally, it's been an amazing, awesome journey. And I've been learning a lot more, and I've been able to connect to this community, which has been honestly one of the highlights of all of this, is just meeting other people. And then I've slowly started to shift it and implement it into my practice just in the last couple months. So in the fall, after I took Georgia's course, I kind of started practicing on like friends or family members that were interested. So I could kind of learn how to do it and just get better with the pitch of like, why are we trying a keto diet and why could it potentially work? And then in the past couple months, I've worked with a couple clients and actually getting like very, very amazing, profound results with that, which I'm very excited about. So I'm I'm optimistic. I'm looking forward to the next year and seeing where this is all gonna go, because this last year of my life, like personally, has been so transformative, and I'm hoping that it's gonna start shifting that way professionally as well. So I feel like I went into a long-winded tangent for a simple question that you asked me, but that's my intro, and that's how I'm utilizing a ketogenic diet.
I just love it, and thank you so much. It was perfect, given the time frame and everything. It just gave us like a really good overview of where you've been and where you are. And I am truly inspired by your story, because it's what really stands out to me is that piece of what you shared, right? Like my life was looking good, and yet there was so much more to improve, and like where you
Oh,
are now in terms of how you feel and how you perform and like everything, it feels like is so much better. But I just love this is to me another proof of the vastness of this diet and its applicability to a wide range of issues. How much that holistic treatment can help us, even if quote unquote, when we are doing well, right? Like you were doing well at your school and like performing well, like getting master degree, family, all of that. So no one would even like think of something is off, but you knew that that's not how you feel, like you were looking for the next thing constantly, that pent up energy. I just think that's a very unique perspective, and I love that you're giving us insights about this, because to me, ketogenic diet doesn't, it's just such a broad, holistic treatment. And here we are seeing another application of it for ADHD.
mhm.
Is that you don't even have to struggle with severe mental health. We know it helps with that as well. But here's another proof that it can, it's almost like a biohacking tool, right? Like you already
Totally.
have a good life, but how much better can it get if you get everything right? Which in this case is switching to that more reliable, better quality source of energy that ketones offer. And all of that. So I think that was really, really helpful for us to get a glimpse into your journey and your story. And I also love that you are able to, through your experience, to also apply that innovative approach in conjunction with everything else that is already existing, right? Like we're not throwing what we knew out and completely wanting to replace it, or maybe we'll see how that goes. But like, I guess what I'm seeing in your work is that you're trying to combine and find optimal solutions. So I know I am very passionate about the topic of medications. That has been a huge driver for me into what led me into exploring those alternative treatments. And I know we've spoke about it, but for those of the people that have not heard your opinion on it, tell us, what is your take on the role of medication and even like all those standard treatments? And can you see keto as a first line treatment? Can someone heal or get to a point with treating their ADHD disorder symptoms where they don't need any medications?
Mhm. So like for myself personally, I don't take medications anymore.
Yeah.
And I should clarify part of this too. So I took Concerta for about a year, and then because I didn't like certain effects that it was giving me, because it almost kind of dulled down my creativity, and sometimes I would almost feel too calm on it, which sounds so backwards because it's a stimulant, right? Most people think you get amped up, and there's always this stigma about people with ADHD on stimulants, but the stimulants calm a person down sometimes if they have ADHD. So it was like those were the moments where I could actually feel relaxed, but I didn't like it because then I felt like I wasn't getting things done. Because again, I still had like these ruminating thoughts of I need to do this and this and this. So even though it physically made me feel calmer, I didn't like it because I felt like I wasn't able to maybe do a lot of the tasks that I wanted to do. So I stopped taking it. I want to say I probably stopped taking it for about 3 months before I even started the ketogenic diet, just because I personally wanted to go back to how I felt before. Um, and I would take it like something like, we went on a ski trip last year with a few friends. So it's like I took it consistently during that week because I knew I was already going to struggle with like the airports, the travel, the organizing piece. So I just wanted that to be easier. We rented a house with a few friends. So I just wanted to feel a little bit calmer during that period. So I would kind of and just use it as needed. But leading up to actually initiating the diet, I was not on the medication at that time. And in terms like regards to medication, I feel like in general, it is a touchy subject.
Yeah.
It depends what's going on for that person, and it's so person specific because sometimes like people need meds depending on what situation they're in on a short-term basis, right? So like a lot of the work that I had to do professionally might have been like in acute settings, in emergency settings, like where you're seeing people who are highly, highly distressed and you need to calm them down quick and fast. And this is where, I'm going to dive into something I've been thinking about a little bit here too lately. Um, it's a bit of a side tangent, I think, to your direct question, and then I'll bounce back. But, hearing other people's personal stories, especially the people who have struggled with bipolar, where they've had like some kind of a psychosis or a hypomanic episode where they get, they involuntarily are taken to hospital. And then, that's what we do. We give people injections to calm them down. And just hearing how incredibly sorry, I feel like I'm getting a bit emotional talking about it because hearing the direct experiences from the clients, or I guess they would have been patients at that time, of how horrifying that was, but also being the clinician on the other end, seeing how distressed that person is and how terrible it is. Like it's a lose-lose situation, right? So like in acute settings, like a lot of the times the medication's needed because the people, like the person just needs to alleviate the distress because it's really, really, really awful to see and witness. Um, so I mean, in certain settings, medications are needed and are helpful. And then in other settings, sometimes people can be overprescribed, you know, so I've seen it all. I guess when I'm thinking about implementing a ketogenic diet, I would never tell anybody off the hop, stop your meds before implementing the diet. If anything, if the meds are creating some sense of stability, allow that to help you start and initiate the diet, because the diet can be a big learning curve. And then there's going to be certain medications that you're going to have to start titrating down, and that's going to have to be done with your physician, because some of the medications, the potency of those medications will start to change once your metabolism shifts. So it's a tricky one, because I feel like I always think if you can try to utilize a diet and a lifestyle change and it's going to help you, that is going to probably eventually be your best course of action if it's not already. Like, that's just more so, I'm kind of talking personally. I kind of think that if there's other interventions that you can use that don't rely on medications, try to use them, you know, but everybody's at a different stage and everybody needs something different. So
Yeah, I love your honesty and objectiveness in your perspective in terms of when and how much, right? And I
yeah,
do agree. I do absolutely agree. And I think very few people would not agree with the fact that for emergencies, medications have their place. I just feel like we're confused about the application and the intention of that medication.
yes, I agree with that.
What is it being designed to do? Is it designed to just handle emergency, or is it a long-term solution? And what I have found in my own experience and seeing others is that actually it's not designed to be a long-term solution.
Oh,
It cannot heal. What it does, it may suppress and manage symptoms. It just does not heal. And so what do we do in the long term, knowing that in addition to the relief it offers, it also has some side effects, right? That can build up. And with time, we may need larger doses that come with more side effects or additional meds. And it just becomes, it's just not optimal. And yeah, and I love your your perspective saying that yes, we can manage, we need that for emergencies, but we just know better that it's not a long-term solution, and that keto intervention offers the long-term perspective that is free of side effect, yet as powerful, if not more, because it heals body on so many levels through the metabolism. So yeah, thanks for that. Well, I would love for people to be able to engage with you and discuss things that are more related to their own journey, or things that they have interest in that I may not know. I do have already a question in the chat for you, but I would like to invite everyone who would like to ask a question to turn their cameras on and just raise their virtual hand, and we'll get to you. If you don't want to do that, you can throw a question in the chat as well. And I know I have a few questions as well. So we'll see how we do with the remaining time. But you guys are welcome to, even if you don't have a specific question, but just want to maybe relate to the story or share your perspective, you're welcome to. This is really our time to discuss and come together in this topic that we're hopefully all inspired by and interested in. So, Natasha, the first question is, what do you mean when you say keto changes the way the drug works? Do you mean it makes its impact stronger?
yeah, so for some medications it can. So I think that, like, I'll just use the drug class antipsychotic medications. So when somebody goes onto a ketogenic diet, and if they are on a certain medication like an antipsychotic, once your metabolism shifts, you might start getting side effects from that medication, because it's almost like the dosing is off. So that medication will now become stronger in your system and it needs to be brought down. So there are certain medications that need to be monitored as somebody's transitioning onto a ketogenic diet, because it will essentially change, like, the potency of the drug.
Yeah, which is also related to the power this diet has, right? Like it's a legitimate therapeutic intervention. And so especially medications like blood sugar regulators or blood pressure, you really need to act quickly when you implement them.
Mhm.
Those can be, yeah, the potency of them can be, it's completely counteractive. So yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for that clarification. And we have Chris here who wants to ask a question. So Chris, I'm gonna ask to unmute and you can let us know what your question is.
Oh, great. Well, I just mainly wanted to thank Natasha for taking the time to kind of share with us. You've been in some of our groups before, and you know how powerful it is for people to share stories, and that's such a main thesis that Donika has tried to, build this channel off of. It really goes far, and especially someone that obviously has so much passion as you do, and firsthand experience and professional experience. It's such a trifecta there. So it's very empowering. You know how it is. We're terrified making big changes like this. And a lot of us are new in this group and coming in, and they have big question marks, as they should, with such a big change. So I just wanted to commend you on that. Loved everything you said. I think it's really, really helpful. I love the nuanced answer about the medication. Sometimes we get in groups like this, and there becomes some like really over hopeful, magical thinking, even that it's this panacea. And I'm as a prey to that, being in it 5 or 6 years as anybody else, because I'm shocked how many levers it pulls, how many upstream effects it tends to have. But at the same time, especially with people that are, dealing with years of medication, we can really get in trouble really, really quick. And so I love your clarification on that, reinforcement on that, and obviously working with professionals if you're going to make headway on that. I'm curious, somebody in your profession, do you think, and I mentioned the word upstream, I think that was one of the more shocking things to me. I had no expectations on 99% of the stuff that it was going to affect when I kind of started making a movement in this direction. And it was shocking. It was really, really shocking to me how many things it affected. From your opinion, professionally and personally, do you think that's really what's going on here? Is whether we call it a stress response or inflammation response, whether it's in the brain or the body or anywhere, that it's really affecting something pretty upstream when we talk about all these things, from attention deficit to bipolar to Alzheimer's to migraines and then all these second tier and tertiary tier things that it seems to affect. Do you think it's a real big upstream, or is it as simple as, well, metabolism's pretty upstream? I'm curious.
Yeah, this is interesting too that you brought this up, because I have pulled up on another screen here. And this is something that Georgia talked about, like Dr. E talked about in her course as well. But on metabolic mind, in the research section, there is essentially, it's this nice little flow chart that kind of talks about the common pathways when we're looking at just kind of illness in general, including mental health, and the effects of the ketogenic diet. So when we're talking about the ketogenic diet, like, it is helping with mitochondrial dysfunction, right? And when we're talking about mitochondria, right, like we all know it as like that powerhouse of the cell, like it's helping convert energy at a cellular level. If you're improving your mitochondria at the most, like at the smallest like point, of course it's going to have this ripple effect throughout your body. I think of it that way, right? Like, if your mitochondria is getting better and you can utilize energy better, of course it's going to help with all sorts of physical ailments and mental health problems. We also have that the ketogenic diet will help with oxidative stress, inflammation, right? There's the glucose hypometabolism, which is an interesting one, because that's something that it actually has been shown kind of in multiple studies at this point, is that ADHD and other mental health disorders, so things like Alzheimer's, bipolar disorder, anxiety, depression, they can see from PET scans that there's certain areas of the brain that cannot metabolize glucose properly. So the idea is that the ketogenic diet can probably bypass some of those mechanisms, which is why your brain can run maybe more efficiently off the ketones than the glucose, because there's, for whatever reason, you know, the brain just isn't able to utilize the glucose appropriately in certain regions. And it's interesting too, because when you look at some of that research, and I'm not going to go into depth because I'm not a researcher in that field, but a lot of these studies will talk about particular regions for each of these mental health disorders that are affected from glucose hypometabolism. And then there's the glutamate GABA imbalance. So like glutamate is a neurotransmitter that kind of like excites parts of the brain, and GABA like inhibits parts. So ketogenic diets have been kind of shown to help with that as well. So I don't know if that answers your question fully, Chris, but I think it's like this diet, and when we're running off ketones, has all of these just effects on probably every part of your body. And we have to think of that too. Like, our brain is part of our body. It is an organ. And I think often we can forget that too when we're talking specifically about mental health. So we're looking at how do we improve our organs overall? And I think that that's probably what a ketogenic diet and relying more on ketones is doing, because it's hitting all of these areas. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
excellent. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, and again, that's on the metabolic mind under the research tab. It talks about that in a bit more depth.
Okay. I was just going to shout out too that it was Donika's birthday. I think it was last week. So happy birthday to Donika, everybody.
Happy
Your
birthday.
fearless leader had a birthday.
Thank you so much. That's so nice. Thank you. Awesome. Yes, and great question and great topic. And that's what I just want to mention, because I'm feeling emotional here too, because it's how simple it is, right? It's almost hard to believe how diet intervention can help mental health and so many other things. But it really, what Natasha just explained, like if we're targeting and resolving the issue at the smallest piece of our body that then feeds everything else and like fixes that energy delivery to all the organs and the cells, then we can only expect everything to improve, which is why I love this without the side effects. So yeah, thanks for that question, Chris, and thanks, Natasha, for answering. Then we have Bront. And please correct me if I'm not pronouncing that right.
Hi, it's Bronte, but that's okay. Yeah, thank you guys for hosting this and having me. I'm very on the educational research level of my knowledge. I actually have had a few conversation with Natasha, and I've listened to your interview between you two, and it's very cool, very simple things. The language used to educate the general public is simple and understanding, and it makes sense. Like, I don't feel I've listened to Chris Palmer, some of the podcasts, and all the people you guys are mentioning, and again, it's just so simple, it makes sense. So it makes me more eager and encouraged to do more research. And someone just said, like, it is so simple, so it is exciting. It's not like you're learning about it and you meet these dead roads. So I'm really enjoying learning about it, especially coming from like two women. I think that's really, really awesome in the mental health and the physical world. So good for you both. I know, I appreciate it. I think one thing that comes up for me, because they've mentioned, or a lot of people mention, measuring the ketones level, knowing that's one way of knowing that it's effective. The other way is, sure, the body shifts and all, your physical well-being. But I think my main question is, like, what ways are there to monitor the levels to know it's effective on that side of things? Like, am I actually fueling my body properly? And am I in the proper level, proper zones? Am I underfeeding myself and I just don't feel it? Because I think, like you've mentioned, Natasha, diet is a struggle across many mental health issues, whether the medication suppresses your appetite or you just don't feel like it. Like, I've had experience with that as well. So I think just knowing, that your body is getting the proper fuels is, I think, just a concern, or more that curious base, like what are ways that you can monitor that? Yeah.
Good, great question. Because I do think that that's such a key part, and it's so incredibly important. And even before somebody transitions onto a ketogenic diet, like, I do recommend start utilizing some kind of an app. Like I use Carb Manager. I think Chronometer is the other one that people will tend to use. But start kind of just getting into the rhythm of tracking what you're actually eating so you know what your overall macros will look like. And then once you transition onto the ketogenic diet, I do think it's important to have a way of monitoring. So the cheapest way, and probably like the cheapest, easiest way, is you can go to a drugstore and you can get what's called keto sticks. And it's a urine strip. So it almost works like a pH. Like you pee on the stick, it'll give you a color and it will kind of tell you a rough ketone level. The only thing you need to know about those are it'll tell you when you're getting into a ketosis, but it's not going to be lifetime accurate. So you could have a level where you're testing having a good ketone response, but that could also be a level that was maybe in your system a day or two ago. So it's not actually indicating as specifically like, what you ate that day and how it's affecting you. There is also now, so in Canada, like I mentioned, there's a blood testing meter, and that's usually what I recommend when people can afford it. It's called Keto Mojo, and you can test both your glucose and your ketone levels from that. And for people who are new to this idea of ketones, like when we're talking about a ketogenic diet, that's what we're looking for, is we want to start to shift our body from running off glucose to running on more ketones. So the diet will help you produce ketones. So it's kind of like, unfortunately, it is one of these diets where if you're monitoring it, yeah, it's black or white. Like your ketones are either in range or they're not going to be in range. Right. So when we want to essentially see like that, when glucose goes down, ketones can go up and vice versa. If your ketones are going down, your glucose is probably going up. So I think when possible, it's nice to monitor both, because then I feel like you're just collecting more data. So if you can look at, maybe an app of what you ate in that day, and then you can like start seeing it on the meter, then you can start correlating like which foods could be causing what kind of reactions over time. And again, like it is a learning curve. I 100% don't ever want to give anybody the impression like ketogenic diet and your life will be rainbows and butterflies and unicorns. Like, there is a lot of things to kind of take into consideration when you're going to transition, and that the transition period, it could be weeks, it could be months, depending on the person. So again, it's going to be very person dependent, but the more you can collect data, you're probably gonna, be a little bit more set up for success. So,
Awesome, thank you.
yeah.
And especially something that you've said before is it's a lifestyle change. So just keeping that in mind too. It's not just a diet change, it's a lifestyle change. So many realms of your life you will have to adapt, you will have to change because it's a lifestyle change. It's not just a diet. So
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. And then just one more question is kind of more around exercise, I guess. Like I am a runner at heart, very extreme long distance running. So again, personally, I rely on glucose sugar. Like sometimes in a step, like I'll do like an 8-hour endurance run. So in 8 hours, I'm just consuming glucose to run. So have you or any experience with exercising and running and playing around with this style of diet? And just in more, I don't know if you guys would have like knowledge or experience or just switching that like from a heavy glucose to that, I guess trusting that, and again trial and error, but not really a question but kind of a vague mini topic.
I feel like I have a really good answer for you too on this one, Bronte. So that was actually something that I struggled with at first on the diet, because it probably took me a good 8 weeks to get back into my gym routine because I felt very fatigued. But what I can tell you is now that I'm fully fat adapted and I've been doing this long enough, I went on a trip to meet a friend. This would have been just last month, to go snowboarding. And I went the previous year on a snowboard trip. So last year, which would have been right before I started the ketogenic diet, I remember my muscles were sore. I had to take multiple breaks. I had to take a down day in between the ski runs for just the muscle recovery. And last month when I went, I had the best performance I have ever had. I did the entire morning. So hill opened. So this was out in Banff. So I did an entire morning, fasted, tons of energy. I stopped with my friend for lunch because she couldn't keep up. So she was hanging out in the lounge, met up with her at lunch, had a Cobb salad. So just basically ate the bacon, the avocado, the cheese on it, some of the lettuce, asked for like a side thing of just like olive oil to toss on top. And then I just stopped for that hour, went back on the hill, and then finished the runs when like the lift was closing, essentially. So I have never ever had so much endurance, and my muscle recovery, I was totally fine. And the day before that, we went on a big hike. So for most people, they would feel pretty tired and drained, and that was not my experience at all. Yeah, and there is a book that I started getting into. Oh,
The art and science.
I'll have to find it after, but it is about sports performance on ketogenic diets because they're finding that it can be utilized for helping athletes train when it comes to like things like that, like longer runs and whatnot, because you're not having to rely on your glucose running out and then shifting because you're already in that metabolic state of running off your ketones. So a lot of people are finding that
Yeah, you're working on keeping your levels high. You're already using what you have. You're not doing all those crazy transitions with your levels. Like, okay, I'll reach out for that book probably at some point. So thank you. Thank you both for hosting. Truly, it's really cool what you guys are doing and just opening it to the public. Like, so yeah, thank you. Thank you for making resources easy and conversation normalized. So yeah, now I'm getting emotional, but thank you. Really.
Okay, thanks, Bronte.
Thank you so much. And I put a book that I love about the topic is The Art and Science of Low. I don't know if that's what you meant, but probably, yeah. It's one of the science-backed, and it really covers that topic of how to work out and like how to do sports while on low carbs. So hopefully that helps. And then we have Celeste next.
Hi there. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. Natasha, I really relate to what you said about pent-up energy. I felt like my whole life I was just holding it all together, like holding it in, trying not to blurt out, trying not to get so excited about things. And I feel like that GABA glutamate balance, like I feel really calm now, and it feels like the first time. Like forever. So I love the keto diet for that. I've been on it for 8 months. Bronte, I wanted to just share a bit about the exercise and training because I had some experience with that. I used to be an endurance athlete, and I would do double centuries, like 200 kilometers on a bike, just go out for the whole day. I found out on keto, and I'm older now, so I'm 53. I was doing that in my 20s. On keto, I would often bonk. And so I'm part of a hiking club, and I live in the mountains. So if it was beyond 2 hours, I would just hit the wall, be shaky. I'd have to eat some fruit and stuff like that. And I really struggled with energy production, even, a few months into the diet. And I had some suggestions from professionals to help with that. So my naturopath suggested that if I'm going on any exercise, like a hike beyond 2 hours, that I take a bowl of oatmeal and eat it right before I start exercising, and that I would burn off the oatmeal during the whole hike, and I would be able to remain in ketosis. And I did find that to be the case. So that was super helpful. And I did a smaller version of that. So right now I'm training for a race in May. It's a mother-daughter race for Mother's Day, and I'm finding that the running is hard again, just with the energy production. So just experimenting, like before I go to the gym, I weigh out 10 grams of dried fruit, and I eat it right before I hit the treadmill, and that seems to be helping. I'm not bonking and like desperate to stop the exercise. And then I'll share a bit of news. The one thing that surprised me most about keto is 6 months in, I have dyslexia with numbers, and it went away. And that's been just life changing. Yeah, I failed math 3 times in high school. Math makes me cry. Anything, it's the combination of numbers with letters, numbers with shapes, and even like my even like my utility bills. Like I couldn't read them because there's like all these shapes and boxes and numbers, and I could never find anything. And that's been a big relief. And I'm starting a math class in a couple of months, and I'm going to do grade 9 math, grade 10 math, and maybe even like 11 and 12 in calculus, because I really want to just overcome like the years of crying and frustration. And I can remember the year my children were born now, and I could never remember before. I'd have to do math. So and just for Natasha, I'm curious about your patients and what their diagnosis was, and yeah, how they're doing. Just a couple of details.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm trying to think here. So I've had a total of 3 people right now who have been transitioning, and the diagnoses vary. So depression, anxiety, borderline personality disorder, ADHD, and OCD. And none of them were like clear cut. Like we're kind of looking at all like clusters and combinations for each of those individuals, had quite a few diagnoses. And some of the effects I'm seeing are just profound. Like we're talking 4 or 5 weeks into the diet, like measures. So we'll do screening measures kind of pre and post for like whatever the disorder is. And measures are trending down. And in some of the cases, very rapidly, like massive changes in a few weeks. Which it's funny because even when I'm like looking over some of these, I'm shocked, but then I'm like, I'm shocked, but I'm not shocked because I've had my own experience, but I'm still shocked. Like it's just wild how much just the diet and the ketones can really change things for people. Like just absolutely incredible. So I mean, that's the area I want to start trending in more, is just to keep trying to get clients who are willing and wanting to do this intervention, because you know it's really powerful. It's like, I mean, I've never, working in this field, yeah, people can get some pretty remarkable changes from medications, but we're talking like changes in every realm of a person's life in a few weeks, and no med's going to do that. Medications can be kind of a helpful tool to stabilize so then people can implement other strategies down the road long term. But there's something about this diet where it's like it's regulating people, it's helping them with focus and concentration, it's helping them with relationships, like it's helping with every faculty of their life. So a med can't do that.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love this about keto, that it literally helps people transform their life and take it to the next level. And what Celeste is talking about is nothing short of it, right? Like what was once impossible becomes possible now. Like literally the mind works the way it's intended. I know for me, my cognition improvement was so significant, I could not recognize myself. I was like 10x. And so I
Yeah.
love hearing those stories. Thank you, Celeste, so much for sharing. It's beyond inspiring. And yeah, you go with that with that next level of taking math and overcoming everything that once was impossible, because it doesn't have to be that way. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Amazing. Tom, I'm gonna ask to unmute. You should get like a prompt and just click yes to unmute. Not coming up. Okay, while you work on that, we'll keep trying, but there is another question here. There are a few actually in the chat for you, Natasha. So let me see which one which is the first one. So Celeste, she did ask that. So the other one was for Jan. I understand that if you adhere to a healthy keto diet, your mental health outcomes will improve. But what about if the opposite occurs? If you experience higher levels of cortisol and anxiety?
So I guess the question is if the ketogenic diet could potentially cause higher cortisol and cortisol. But okay, so this is actually where my mind is going with this. So cortisol is typically going to be linked with higher glucose levels. So I'm just going to talk about cortisol with a ketogenic diet, because this is something that I think is important, because most people that I know that have transitioned have struggled with this in terms of their first morning reads when they're tracking their glucose or their ketones in the morning. So part of our circadian rhythm relies on cortisol. So as you're waking up in the morning, if you have a healthy circadian rhythm, your cortisol is going to go up and glucose goes up with cortisol. So if you're on a ketogenic diet and you're doing your first reading in the morning to see where your ketones are, a lot of people find that their ketones are low in the morning. And that is why, is because when glucose goes up, again, glucose goes up, ketones come down. So if cortisol is going up, glucose is going up, ketones are going down. So my guess is on a ketogenic diet, if you're implementing the diet and you're producing more ketones, the cortisol and the glucose should be coming down. If it's not, then there could be something else happening there that needs to go through some kind of troubleshooting. Like, you know, and again, I've only been learning about this in the past year, and I'm slowly starting to work with clients on that. I haven't seen that happen, so I can't really comment on it further. I'm just more so thinking of kind of the underlying mechanisms here that, you know, cortisol should actually start to come down in terms of that link with anxiety. And a lot of people who struggle with anxiety, when they implement the diet, the anxiety gets substantially better. So yeah. My guess is, like, if there's going to be cortisol spikes, it's probably within that transition period, which could be the first few weeks. And if you can get past that, it's probably going to restabilize.
Okay, thank you. And let's check back in with Tom if he can unmute now. Perfect.
Oh, good.
Oh, thanks, Natasha and Donika, and actually everybody that's contributing, because a lot of these things, when you guys ask questions, are helping me a lot. I'm just going to speak to the past week. I've been on keto for probably 4 months and was doing extremely well. And then the proverbial whatever hit the fan. And, you know, I think a lot of what happened, you know, could very well be things like, you know, the glucose, the cortisol, and anxiety, because I learned that I have, and I don't even know to what level of severity, because I haven't been to the cardiologist yet. It's been scheduled. But I had, when I was having another CAT scan for something unrelated, I asked to have a CAT scan for calcium test. And we found out that the LAD, I think is a main artery or whatever, has like, it's rated at an 81, and like 10 to 100 is small amount of plaque. So that started to put me into a tailspin. And so then I started to think about, well, heck, the only way I'm hitting my fat numbers is through a lot of dairy, and I'm having a really hard time otherwise. And there are a couple other things that I have that also I think play an impact on metabolism, being able to, I don't know, is it metastasize, or, you know, where you can take methylcobalamin, but you can't take regular cobalamin with your B12 because you have to pass a step so MTHFR can get it into your body. So I have hypothyroidism, I have MTHFR, I have some plaque starting on the heart. So lo and behold, I went crazy last week. Okay. And I'm also experiencing some of the things you're talking about with this whole cortisol overnight, glucose, and then a drop in my ketones. So the whole thing's been a challenge. I'm trying to balance, and there's fear and all that's going on. And I don't think you can necessarily answer this for me other than maybe if you have an understanding of the hypothyroidism, I understand that, it affects sleep, or sleep affects hypothyroidism. Hypothyroidism affects all kinds of things in hormones and whatever. So try to encapsulate that and, advise me on what to focus on first, like, because I did actually was doing really well. And I stepped into like a little bit of deep prescribing. And I don't know what happened. Was it the cortisol from the anxiety? Was it the deep prescribing? So I was like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So you're learning all these things about what you have playing against you. And then you're like, you're crippled, right? So is there anything about hypothyroidism, MTHFR, and like the dairy component and finding other non-dairy options that can get me to 200 grams, of fat, and then without blowing my 100 grams of protein number, so.
I have a few thoughts that are coming up here, Tom. Like, I don't think I can really comment too much on like the hypothyroidism component, because that's just something that I wouldn't know enough about. Okay. But with that being said, you've already identified one of the problems could potentially be the amount of dairy that you have to consume, right? So, and that's actually like, I also try not to consume a lot of dairy. I still will on the diet, but really trying to shift to the other fat sources. So things like, can you use like MCT oil or coconut oil or something in a beverage throughout the day, just to try to substitute so you're not utilizing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I always like to find the natural whatever coconut oil is. So it's like, how much olive oil can I consume? How much avocados can I eat? How much, and then if you eat like nuts, you're like protein,
Right.
You don't have your 2-to-1. So yeah, I guess I can introduce a lot more coconut oil.
Yeah, like even that, right? You can pop the coconut oil in a coffee, tea, whatever, broth, and still
You
get it
can't make up
with
500 calories of heavy cream in your kefir. And however, that's the problem, man, because I make kefir every morning, but it's not milk based, it's heavy cream because I don't want the carbs. So there's like this transition that I have to figure out.
Yeah, and some of it might just be like, how do you pop some of extra fats into the other foods that you're eating, like throw the extra butter or whatever in your actual meals, right?
That's still the dairy though, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know, like if you had something like ghee, is that going to still have some effect, right? Or is it going to potentially just be a better option than the other types of dairy?
Right, or duck fat or.
Yeah. The other thought I'm having here too is like, when we're talking about ketone production, sometimes we can get our blinders on when we're thinking specifically about the diet, but there are other interventions that you can look at, right? So is it like, is part of it like doing maybe the intermittent fasting and like trying to like squeeze all of the meals in a shorter time period? As I mentioned, some of you might be familiar, but on that Metabolic Mind site, there's that whole Think Smart framework, starting to kind of look through that and figuring out like, what are other tools that I'm not doing that I could pull in that can still help with my overall like mitochondrial health.
Right.
And this kind of goes back to that whole idea of it being lifestyle. Like when I started, I was really focused on the ketogenic diet part just because I felt so good. And I'm now transitioning more into the other things. So it's like part of the lifestyle for me was getting connected with other people in the community, also trying to just do a little bit more exercise, spend more quality time outside. I have like those blue light blockers that I wear in the evenings now when I'm watching TV before I go to bed. Like all of those little lifestyle changes, if you slowly start to implement them, I think actually make pretty significant changes, because I try to do a lot of those things now and I feel substantially better than I even felt when I started the diet. So I think like just making sure those things are in check, like the sleep, the movement, being outside, potentially intermittent fasting. I've been playing around with fasting a little bit more.
Yeah.
So all of those things should still help with the ketone production.
Right. Well, I'm
Yes.
actually going to reach out to Natasha afterwards because I like to get a little deeper into this.
For
But
sure.
I saw a question from Teresa, and hopefully she'll be able to get that one in because it's a good one.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. Thank you
Yep.
for your question. And then I'm going in order here. So Natasha, a question from Natalie is curious and practical question. How have you managed the keto diet with a diverse lifestyle? Socially, for example, or when traveling, etc.
Yeah. That's a really good question because that's something that it took a while for me to figure out and learn. So when I started the diet, I tried to make it as simple as I could because this was relatively new for me. I struggled with ADHD, so I couldn't do well when it came to grocery shopping, organizing, cooking anything. So what I did for the first few weeks is I found a couple of like keto casserole recipes. I made like a bulk casserole that I would eat throughout the week, and then I would have like eggs, bacon, avocado, and then maybe like one or two other items. And that is all I ate like every day for the first few weeks. And then once I was feeling better, everything got easier in terms of implementing the diet. In terms of social outings, I feel like I'm a lot better at that now, where if I'm going somewhere, I can kind of either plan in advance, so I can either bring some kind of snacks with me. And there might be the odd time where it's like, depending what's going on, like I might have to like do what I now call like a cheat snack. So it might have to be something like a meta bar, which whatever, it's like it's a processed keto bar, but like if I'm in a pinch, I might have one in my bag and I might use it if I absolutely have to, if I'm going to some kind of an event. Or I'm just try to be mindful of what I could eat at the event. So if there's meat, I'm probably just gonna eat meat. And then traveling, I find that I just fast more when I'm traveling. So it's like I might put the fats that I need kind of in like the coffee, tea, whatever. And then once I'm at the destination, again, just trying to figure out like where's there a convenience store, maybe I'll stock up. Like if I'm at a conference or something, I'll go to a grocery store, stock up on whatever I can that's keto friendly. So usually you can get like hard-boiled eggs or like certain types of meat products, stack them in my fridge of my hotel room, and kind of off I go. So you figure out the workarounds as you go. And ultimately, like, I think the biggest advice I can give is like just doing what your body will tell you what you need to do. You just have to listen to it. Like you just have to trust it. Right? Like if I'm out somewhere socially and I'm just if there's not good food options, but I'm okay to fast, I might just fast. Like I'll listen to what my body wants to do during those periods.
Yeah, I
A
love
lot
that.
of trial and error.
Thanks for that. I think one of my experience as well has been that when we transition to burning ketones, our satiety level and ability to go without food changes dramatically in
Totally.
even expect, right? Like we can
Yeah.
fast effortlessly. It's just the body does not need any food. So a lot of people, when they hear fasting, it feels scary. And I can relate to that because when you're burning glucose for energy, it really is hard. You have you feel the lows, like a drop of energy, cravings, but that completely changes on the diet. And I just wanted to throw in, probably that's a good opportunity. So Natasha and I did a fun little like shorts on topics like how to dine out on keto, or what has been more challenging for us. All of it is on my YouTube channel. So I'm gonna send a link in the chat for those of you that want to dive deeper. But I think you're gonna find some helpful info, hopefully in a quick way too, so we don't have to watch hours and hours of content. And so keeping up with the questions here, the next one that I see is, what is the best way to begin on the keto diet? That's from Roger.
The best way.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think from my own experience. Like, I mean, if I had to do it again, it probably would have been easier to be connected with a community like this to start, just to have the extra support in place. So, I mean, so that's kind of step one, like keep coming to meetups and other people who are doing it, because that transition piece, it can be really rough, and I can see people wanting to give up along the way. And again, kind of that organizational piece, like make it as simple as you can. Like, and that's what I had to do. I had to be like, this is what I'm eating, and I have to come to terms that these food items are just what I'm gonna have to eat and rotate for the next couple of weeks until I can transition. So just really, really simplifying it. Like, you know, don't feel like you have to go all out getting like beautiful cuisine recipes on ADHD, or sorry, on ketogenic foods for ADHD. Just keep it as simple as you can,
I love,
and try to get the support in place.
yeah, yeah. And then we also have a question from Teresa here. My question is, how do I help loved ones who could benefit from this lifestyle be more open? I have two young adult children, one with severe bipolar and another with ADHD. Both are struggling with life. They love carbs and sugar. And any tips on how I could help them be more open to trying this? She says, I have read all the books and believe in the science. I'm working to transition myself to keto to help my own brain age better. Thank you for this beautiful communities, what she says.
Wow, okay. That's that's a tricky one, and I relate to being obsessed with the carbs. I used to, like, prior to this diet, I used to buy a loaf of rye bread. We have this brand here, it's called Natural Bakery. It was the best rye bread, and I would just like sit there and eat it like piece by piece, like half of the loaf, because I was just like obsessed with needing to get carbs. So I totally understand the struggle, that you're seeing with the loved ones. And this is where a lot of it's about timing too. Like there's only so much information you can give to another person, and that person's going to have to be the one to essentially make the change. And I think that's where it gets really, really difficult, when a person can be like, look at all this research, this could work, and the other person's not really quite receptive. But I think that's all you can do at this point, is just kind of relay some of the information. Go to Metabolic Mind, see if there's any like little clips that they might be willing to listen to. And the other thing too, there's a lot of research coming out right now. The more research that comes out, the more that might eventually hopefully help with a buy-in down the road with the kids. So
I love that. Thank you so much, Natasha. I think with that, we kind of covered most of the questions. I know we're running out of time, and I appreciate your willingness to stay a little bit longer. I just want to take a moment to thank you, Natasha, for sharing your insights, for being so honest, and like your commitment to helping just shines through. And I love that you're proper information from your professional expertise, but also your personal experience. I thought this was amazing. I thank you a lot for being part of it, for helping us all dive deeper into this not so talked about field of application of the diet. I think it's invaluable, and it's so needed. And I just want to say thank you again. Thanks to everyone else who also attended. I really appreciate your time, and I know it's a weekend, and your commitment to being here and sharing your experiences, your inspirations, your challenges as well is very, very helpful. So I thank you all. I do invite everyone who is inspired by this to check out the YouTube channel. Natasha and I did the in-depth interview where she shares more about her experience into more details. We also did some fun shorts that may offer some helpful advice. And I will be looking forward to more events like that. Hopefully, Natasha will love to join us again at a later point in different formats or different capacity. But Natasha, tell us where people can connect with you. I have included all the links in the chat, but tell us once again how, if someone wants to continue the conversation, where can they find you?
yeah, so everything that you put kind of in that bio, they can connect with me through any of those means. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter /X, and then my email as well. So feel free to reach out. I don't mind answering questions at all. So if you're kind of like, oh, I wish I would have asked this, just reach out and I'll try to help you out to the best of my ability. So either any of those platforms are fine, email or social media.
Excellent. And I just put all the links in the
Awesome.
chat as well for those who don't want to go back to the event and see it. But I guess we're done for today. Thank you all for participating, for being part of this movement. I'm deeply inspired and love seeing us coming together and collaborating and just offering and getting support from each other. It's truly remarkable experience. So I appreciate you all, and I'm looking forward to connecting soon again. You guys take care and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, take care. Have a good weekend.
Well, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.